Hey there everybody, thanks for joining me for this demonstration where we're going to create your first resource group and virtual network. We're going to use the virtual network that we create in this demo in an upcoming demonstration where we'll create a virtual machine. So to follow along and create your resource group and virtual network, make sure you're logged into portal.azure.com using the username and password you set up for your free subscription. What we want to do then is browse into resource groups. Now you may or may not see resource groups in this top list here. You should actually see it in this bottom menu down here, and you can also see it by choosing to search for it or going to the menu on the left hand side as well. For me, I'm just going to go ahead and choose resource groups from the main screen, and then I'll go ahead and create a new resource group. So I'll click on create, and then what you can see is that to create a resource group, there's not actually a lot that we need to configure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this in my existing subscription, Azure Subscription 1. I'll give my resource group a name of VNet1-RG, and then I'm going to pick a region. Now for that region, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to choose Australia. Okay, and you can see I've got all the different options here, Australia East, Central, and Southeast. Now remember, the resource group just contains the metadata, so it's actually not going to influence or limit where we can create our resources. So to just prove that point, I'll create this resource group in the Australia Central option, and then we can go ahead and click on Review and Create. That validation should pass, and we can go ahead and click on Create. All right, fantastic, that's ready to go. And now that we've actually created a resource group, we can see it listed in the resource groups blade. And that's what you'll come to experience as really common for all of the different things you use. So for example, if we browse back to Home, and then we go to the search bar, and I search for virtual networks. Okay, if we look at virtual networks, we see an empty list, which we will expect to see grow as we create our virtual networks. So that's what we want to do now. We want to go ahead and create a new virtual network. But one really important thing that I did just want to call out is that when you create this virtual network, it needs to be in the same region that you are going to deploy your virtual machine in the upcoming demonstration. Now, one limitation that you might face if you're using a free subscription is that only certain locations will currently be unlocked. So let's actually just quickly go ahead and check that now. And I'm going to do so by performing a common trick when working with Azure, which is to right-click on the home menu up here and choose to open the link in a new tab. So if you are currently working through anything and you just wanted to check on some settings, what you can do is open up the portal in a different tab and you can see all of that same experience here. Now what I'll quickly do is I'll browse into virtual machines that you might see here in the menu or through the search bar, and I'm just going to click on Create and choose Azure Virtual Machine. Then all I'm going to do is click on the regions list, and I want you to take a look at what region you want to use for your virtual network. You would actually expect to see many more regions here if you are working in a full production subscription. However, since we've only just gotten started with a free Azure subscription, we can only see a limited list of regions. For me, the region I want to deploy my virtual machine to will be Australia East. So I'm going to go ahead, I'll close down that tab, I don't need it anymore, and then I want to create my new virtual network. I'm going to do so by clicking on the Create option, and then you'll see we've got a kind of similar experience to what we saw when we created a resource group. When you work with the Azure portal, you're going to see this same creation wizard experience. The only difference is, depending on the service that you are building, you will see different options here because there are different properties that you need to configure. So for us, first things first, for our new virtual network, where do we want to deploy that to? We'll deploy it to our existing new subscription. We're going to deploy that to the resource group that we just created, but we could choose to create a new one if we wanted to. And then we need to give it a name. What we'll do is we'll just call that VNet1. But you could really call it whatever you like. Now what we're seeing here are the common properties that we always need to configure for our resources: the subscription, resource group, name, and region. So for this virtual network, I know that I want to deploy my virtual machine to this virtual network, so I need to make sure that that matches the region. So what we just saw is if I scroll up to the top here and we click on the filter options, I could search for Australia. Now for me, I want to choose Australia East because I saw that I could create some virtual machines there. So just be sure you pick a region that suits your subscription as well. Now what we could really easily do is just click on the Review and Create option and skip the steps. But I do just want to show you what that experience is like. If I click on the next option here, you'll see I'm just moving through the different components of this Create a Resource wizard. I could in fact use the options at the top and choose to skip through that way. Or I could actually just go skip back to the start and choose to use the next option instead. Now what we want to do is just leave all of this as default. So I'll click on next for IP addressing. I'm going to leave the IP address range as default, next for tags, next for summary, and validation. All right, that validation has passed successfully, and this is something that will happen for all of the resources you try to create. So once you've got that green passed validation option at the top, you can go down and click on create. Now, depending on what you are creating, this can sometimes take some time. For virtual networks, it won't take too long because it's largely just a private address space that is being carved up for you. So we'll just give this a moment and you'll see we're ready to go. Now I could choose to go to resource, or I could actually just browse back to the home window and I could click on things like the resource group view, the virtual networks view, or I could even choose to navigate into all resources and see everything that has been created for me. Now I do just want to call out that if you're taking a look at all resources and you see your virtual network has been created and you see another resource here, there we go, it's just been created now, something called network watcher _ region name, don't worry about that resource. No, you didn't create it yourself, but when you created the virtual network, the platform created it for you. There are no costs for that resource. You can delete it if you want to, but it's just managed behind the scenes and it's actually used for monitoring virtual networks. Okay, everybody, so we've got everything that we need within this demonstration. You've created a resource group, a virtual network, and in the upcoming demonstration, we'll create a virtual machine and deploy it to our new virtual network. Thanks for joining me. I'll catch you there.